Hi, everybody. This is Tom Broussard. Today is the last day of Aphasia month. Yeah, last day of June. It has been a busy, busy month, I'll tell you. And everybody has a story to tell. And that's what I got for you today, is another story to tell. When the virus started, it was in March of this year. It's hard to believe it's only been 3 months since all this happened. And my last presentation was in Tallahassee. And we were coming home on that Thursday night and listening to the news, we could tell that something was going on with the virus, but enough to figure, well, let's stop at the store and see what's going on. So we stopped there late on that Thursday night. The store was open, nobody there in particular, nobody shopping in particular. So we thought, okay, whatever it is, it'll come slowly enough. So we went home. It was late. But through the weekend, we got to understand that more thing was happening, and then we would end up being sheltered in place on Monday. So I went to the store again on Saturday and got there. It was quite a mob. Everything was gone, especially the toilet paper, which you have seen some of my presentations before about the toilet paper. So I don't even remember if we bought anything in particular, because I figured we had the normal amount of toilet paper, which is always a couple of months. So that was really the beginning of the virus. Within, well, the next day, I told my local stroke group that I wouldn't be coming to the next group meeting until after we got through this virus thing. And sure enough, by a day or two later, an announcement went out that nobody would be going to the stroke group until things settled down, until we figured out what was going on. But by Monday, I also decided, and then within a day or two, the gym, my local gym, also closed to clean it and again to figure out what was going on. But I have to keep walking just for health reasons for sure. So I started walking again on Monday. And it still wasn't terribly, terribly hot, which it is in Florida. So I started walking, and I happen to be able to read while I'm walking, believe it or not. I can actually take material like this and read it, make lots of notes. And I've been doing that for a long, long time. And so I started walking. A lot of people saw that we were all walking. We would all wave. And within days, people saw that I was reading. And most people apparently can't read or choose not to read. And eventually people started asking me. People are terribly curious. We all had the virus. So yeah, there was a lot of talk about that. But soon enough, we had enough to talk about the virus. We had to come up with something else. And people started asking what I was doing since I could read. And they asked if I was maybe a lawyer or a teacher. And I told them that I study because I was taking notes, and I said I study and research the brain. And I said stroke and aphasia. Do you know what aphasia is? 80%, 90% don't have a clue. And I said, me too. I had no idea, but I had my first stroke and aphasia outside of Boston. And it is when you lose your language. You cannot read, write, or speak well. And I told them, I was a dean at that college, and I fell down on that street, got aphasia, and I could not read, write, or speak well, lost my job. At that point, they were pretty much amazed. I said, I know, but it's almost 9 years. It takes a long time to regain your language. That was the beginning. And now many more people started to ask me more questions, because for the most part, they all had experiences in their family or good friends with stroke. Very few knew anything about aphasia, but they had people with stroke, and they knew that somebody couldn't communicate. They couldn't talk. And I said, well, that's what aphasia is. It's such a much broader issue, because when you have aphasia, there's any number of things that credit you with not being able to communicate, but reading, writing, and speaking in different ways with different deficits. So that was all very interesting, and they had lots of questions. But of course, we're walking, so they had lots of questions, and the answer would come on the next lap, because we still go by and we don't stop for too long, although eventually some of the groups, sometimes they were in larger groups. There were 3 going by. And after a few times, they said, why don't we just stop here for 5 or 10 minutes and you tell us more? We want to know more. And one of them actually ended up calling it Aphasia 101 class. And I always had my different t-shirts on. So yes, we did start stopping for 5 or 10 minutes, depending on what they wanted to do and what the topics were. But some in particular were very interested, not only in their family, but not worried, but wanted to know more about stroke and aphasia for their own purposes, because we're all getting older and they want to know more about how the brain works, how the damage occurs, and how you can get better based on the damage that you had. So it was a very, very interesting experiment, as it turns out, quite accidental. But after a bit, I began to realize that since I couldn't go to make presentations, I had already signed up for a weekend of speaking at the sidewalk at the local Publix grocery store. I'd signed up for that. Of course, that was gone. And I wanted to figure out another way that I could help people better understand about stroke and aphasia. And starting my walking, that's why it turned out to be quite accidental, because I was studying stroke and aphasia. It was easy when they saw it. They were so curious anyway. Then I would explain to them, this is what I do. And of course, everybody, whether you had a stroke or not, everybody, older people, knew or had for themselves kidney issues, heart issues, lung issues, and of course, stroke issues. So it was very interesting for all of us. I learned a lot from the group for sure. And I don't want to call it the group, but there were a whole bunch of people who sometimes presented themselves in front of me. So I had to talk plenty to one at a time going forward in this social distancing world. Again, realizing that we all have to adapt to this new world and figure out what's going to get better going forward, not only at the governmental level, but even us individually, talking to our neighbors, since for the most part, again, the only thing you learn is from reading or from other people. And a lot of people watch TV, and they get what they get out of TV as well. So I began to understand that this was my new job with the virus now having happened, and started because of stroke aphasia month. I set up my booth out on the sidewalk next to my house every Sunday in aphasia month from 7 to 9 in the morning. I would always walk Monday through Saturday, walking 7 to 9, but on Sunday I would sleep late. So I wouldn't walk. So I used 7 to 9 to have that big, beautiful booth. And you saw it at the beginning of this presentation when I held it up so that others could see that was me and that's my material. And of course, they're talking about Go National Aphasia Association, which everybody should sign up for. Everybody should contribute to. It's the only organization in the country really that is used for everybody to better understand what aphasia is all about. Although there are many other very useful websites as well, including my own. Stroke Educator is that kind of activity for educating people. But the National Aphasia Association is the one to go to first with all kinds of information going forward. But it continued to be a very interesting experiment because I learned a lot from the people who then shared with me their stories in our Aphasia 101 class about any number of things, including a new one today, walking with another fellow. He saw this, asked about it, and he said, "Oh, my dad had a stroke, but he doesn't have any problem talking." And I said, "What side is his stroke?" And he goes, "The left side," meaning this side. And I explained to him how the brain works and why a person with aphasia typically has damage on the left side in the Broca's area. And of course, the fellow thought that was very interesting because they'd never heard about Broca's area, never mind aphasia. But his dad is 80 something and doing well, doing very well. So everybody has a story to share, and most people, all people, find sharing stories to be highly therapeutic because you learn from others, you learn from your own idea of what you thought you had seen and heard over time going forward. So it's a very therapeutic intervention, if you want to call it that, to share stories. And again, in this particular world, maybe people don't really think so much about building relationships if you're not able to see them and shake hands, which I really do like a lot, being a Navy person as well. You have to build relationships, and there have to be different ways you can do it. One of those is even with a video like this. But to build relationships in this new world, it still does allow you to be able to build and maintain those relationships with your neighbors here on the street, with otherwise strangers out on the street, just who happen to be highly curious, because that's the way cats and humans are. And it was relatively easy to begin to understand that, given the curiosity nature of humans, to just basically show them something, anything. Now I start asking them, because they all have shirts on. So every time I see them now, because I'm sure they're bored about me talking about stroke and aphasia all the time. So now I ask them, what's that? Yesterday I asked about Grenada, and he took a few minutes to explain that he and his wife go to Grenada as part of a nonprofit that goes to check young kids that have heart issues. They get assessed there at their islands, and then using the nonprofit in the United States, they fly them to the United States, do the surgery, get them better, and send them home. They do that every year, sometimes twice a year, donating time, money. Grenada. So it is incredibly interesting to all of us who use curiosity as another therapeutic intervention. Because if the people with whom you are trying to build a relationship who otherwise can't speak terribly well because of aphasia, then there are any other number of ways that we can continue to build the interest for the person who needs to build that interest enough to approach the need to be able to speak about what they are already interested of going forward. So in this particular case, I was very, very lucky to have started and now continue. It's not really an experiment. It just is the way it is for me every day. But I am encouraging other people to consider doing even this, building relationships with otherwise total strangers to become nice new friends. Some are very nice friends. Another fellow doing training today on one of the boats that he commands. Mass social distancing, big boats, still helping them better understand how to use the sea, still going out there doing their training. So every single day, I begin to realize that we can continue to adopt and adapt in this new world of otherwise isolation, which can be also not fun to be so isolated. Again, not unlike people with stroke and aphasia who are also likely isolated because they cannot communicate, nor can the people around you communicate with them because they don't know who we are. So they don't really want to engage with people with aphasia. So it is a two-way street. And my work continues to be helping educate the wider public, including hospitals, which do not use stroke and aphasia, as part of their lexicon, their everyday lexicon. And my new nonprofit called Aphasia Awareness for All has started. You'll get to see it online soon with all of the other additional interventions. I'll call them interventions, but really they're nothing more than educating people one way or another about stroke and aphasia. That's what I do. That's what you should do. That's what everybody listening to this should do. Whether you have stroke and aphasia or you work in that world, and you do understand that this is very important to help others understand what they otherwise can't understand before, this can be the chance for you to do something that is that easy but still continue to educate people who otherwise never would, but they're so curious that they otherwise can understand going forward. So contribute if you can to the National Aphasia Association. That would be, as we say, wicked good. So I do appreciate that. I will see you in another 2 weeks. Some very interesting things coming up through the summer and getting ready for more activities that you'll show up on my new website, helping, again, by state and around the country to move beyond the 7 to 8% that are aphasia aware into 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Why not? 100% of people know about stroke. They don't know much about it, but they know enough to know what it is, such that it is part of the public consciousness of stroke. Aphasia needs to be built into the public consciousness. And then you have 100% of people know about aphasia. Don't have to know it all. You just have to know that it is there. All right, guys, have a good week, and I will see you soon. Take care of yourself. Take care. Bye-bye.